Welcome to I Mustache You Something. We left off with continuing to struggle on how is it that we can continue doing the right thing if we are in either a community or in a relationship. And regardless of whether we're talking about, a marriage or a priest or a workplace, I think it's a legitimate thing. I need to do the right thing, even if I'm in an environment where people aren't. I need to do the right
Right.
thing, even though the other person isn't.
Right.
And I personally, I don't have the right answer as to when I say that's as best that's as good as I can do. I can't try any harder if you don't do X. And there are relationships that are more permanent, like marriage. But I don't consider the relationship with your church community to be something that's sort of like, oh, I like this church and oh no, I'm over it. I'm going to go to that church.
No,
I
no.
think that there is a sort of church hopping, what have you done for me lately kind of approach. And Mitch mentioned last time that, that's not something that the traditional apostolic, Orthodox churches or Catholic churches generally do, right? Like they don't say like, "Oh, how do we keep your business?" We say like, "Here's Christ on the altar. You're welcome to stay."
Well, I think what Sharif was saying, like that's what's gotten, when I first, was like 17 or 18 years old, and I was like, what kind of world do I inhabit? Like, what is this church that I'm in that's very, I don't, um, I don't begrudge the priests, their duties or their blessings, but ultimately I will be the one to stand before God for what I did, and God is not going to take, well, the priest didn't and the church couldn't and or my wife wasn't, there's no excuses. What was I prepared to do and what did I do? And I think that's ultimately what it is. And that's why Sharif is right. I mean, as much as I can criticize a bishop or a priest or a synod or a congregation or my wife, ultimately the end is going to be me standing in front of God or kneeling before God and giving an account for what I did. And there's going to be no excuses. Oh, the priest wasn't nice, or the priest wasn't smart, or the priest was too arrogant. None of that cuts it because what did you do? And I think, that's ultimately, you know, uh, what Sharif is saying, and ultimately what we then have to do. And I think that's then what kept me in the church. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be this, cafeteria person who runs around trying to pick the right church. I'm in the right church. God put me here for a reason. St. Anthony said, "Don't move around too much." So I'm not going to move around too much. This is the ground I'm in. You know, sometimes it's fertile and sometimes there's poop in it and sometimes there's concrete, but what's my job? And I'm supposed to do my job. I can't run away. So
And I think this mentality, you can extract the good thing from the clergy or the prelate or the Pope himself. It's an extraction process. Like, for example, back in the days, back in Egypt, I've seen an exuberant amount of clergy corruption on all levels: financial, ethical, pastoral, uh, psychological, mental. And here, and there was a turning point at a certain point, and I give credit actually to Abuna Tadros for this. Like one time, I criticized the prelate very harsh, and everyone was like, "Oh, you destroyed yourself. You'll be kicked out of the church very soon." Of the church, not the local church. So Abuna Tadros called through like intermediate person, come and sit with us. So I told him, and such happened, yada, 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 yada. What do you think Abuna Pshoy will do if he's in my position? So he said, you do exactly what you did. And he was lying. He will never do what I did. He gave us support and he directed my way, like, and my mind. You know, the church had been in much more difficult situation, more corruption, more troubles. It's what are you doing? So that was just before I moved to the States. So coming here and with a new mentality, I want to extract the good thing from every priest, prelate, servant. Like we have very difficult servants in many churches, like they have their own psychological issues that we need to deal with. Parents, like priests, prelate, bishops, and you can smell the corruption. And corruption here is not a bad word; it's a theological term, technically. I'm corrupt. Like all of us are corrupt.
Mhm.
We are mortal. So you can smell. And actually, the first liturgy that I attended in Natick about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, before I moved, I told my friends there is a smell of death in this church.
Wow.
For some reason, I like the ladies were in their like very expensive dresses, shoes, jewelry, a very fake atmosphere. But once I put my, my foot on the ground, start serving, every one of those people that I smell death in them, I'm now extracting the life from them for my benefit and for the benefit of the church. Same people, same behavior, but it's a mentality.
Yeah, it's very important.
You don't like it,
Who?
Mina.
I'll tell you, Sharif, that I think I shared with you the book that I'm writing.
Yep.
So, Ralph, I'm writing a book, and you've heard of Mere Christianity.
Of course.
So this is Mere Heresies. And um, I finished the first chapter, and at the end of the first chapter, I have like these personas and like the different like sort of tendencies that we all have. And some people, want to pretend everything's okay. Some people want things to be perfect and are like super compulsive. Some people want to just, mesh it head and like we're all saying the same thing and, we're all in agreement here. Some people want to hold on to like whatever bastion of power they have. And whether I like it or not, whether I admit it or not, the persona that I have that I struggle with is the critic. Um, and it works well in certain capacity where, like for example, if, you know, in the deacon service, you need somebody just sort of monitoring things, making sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to, the chorus is doing what they're supposed to, the altar responses are being said properly. That sort of critical perspective um, lends itself to that attention to detail, right? Like if there's like one kid like off in the corner, like his face is like 17 degrees this way instead of like I see it, right? And I've learned, over the course of 30 years to dial down how much feedback I give and if I'm going to give feedback, how I'm going to give it. And, now we have like an exceptional group of like, high school, college, young professional deacons that, serve as a buffer and a translation between, the ogre and, people that are potentially more sensitive so that, they know like hey, like maybe don't do that. Like, no, maybe stand over here. And that way, they're less likely to have to deal with me, which is good for everybody. But I think that there's a limit, right? And just like I've learned to sort of tone it down in the diaconate, I've learned to tone it down in, a lot of walks in life. Um, and that's me, right? Like I'm the critic. There's, the cynic and the politician, and there's all these like different personas. And the the point of that chapter was for us to sort of recognize, what it is that I'm missing, right? Like, what should I be doing differently? How am I protecting myself and allowing myself to do that is a disservice to myself and the community around me? Um, it sounds like, Sharif and I, not surprisingly, share that same struggle where, noticing when there's a problem is very easy. Um, Seeing the good in something and seeing the positive in something is the, area of growth for us. And, I think in an ideal world, right? In an ideal world, everybody figures out like kind of where they are. Um, in relationship to the community and identifies how they're hurting themselves and others, right? So if you're being too critical, then be less critical. If you're not critical enough, then be more critical, right? And that shift in perspective allows us to be of better service to the community, but also I do think that it's for our salvation. And I think that's what you were, saying earlier, Ralph. It's like I'm responsible for my own salvation. And if I'm in an environment that sucks, okay, like God's not going to say, oh, you got to pass because you were, in this really tough environment and you didn't really have to try. It's an environment in which you are invited to work out your own salvation.
Right, right. And beware lest ye fall. I'm reminded, when you're talking about it's that well-known story from Chesterton. He's the London Times is asking for contributions from philosophers and scientists and great thinkers to the question of what is wrong with the world, and they're writing, 600-700 word essays. And Chesterton's is a 2 word essay. It's I am, I am what's wrong with the world.
Right.
And I think when you go from there, what you need to start there, but you can't end there because it takes a lot of hubris to really think that the only thing that's wrong with the world is me,
Right.
but you got to start there because beware lest I fall. But also I think, if you look at, if we have examples in our church of, whether it's Saint Athanasius or whether it's Saint Anthony or whether it's I can think of a dozen others who stood against the tide of what they believed was wrong. And I think sometimes we, as Copts, forget that they're not just a part of our theological history or something that we're proud of, but they're also examples for us. I mean, every time I heard that St. Athanasius was a deacon, or 18 years old, when the stories that we're told, the sort of myths that are, the hagiography that grows around them. I still, that to me was like a clarion call. Like this is, you stand in a line on the shoulders of these giants who did not take whatever was going on around them and just say, okay, well, that's the way things are, and we wouldn't be where we were to where we are today, whether it's in the monastic community or even theologically, if it wasn't for Saint Athanasius or Saint Anthony.
I mean, this is similar to what we were saying earlier, how like we distance ourselves from the priest and we say, oh, well, I have no responsibility because I'm not the priest. It's, well, you're you're part
Who
of the
cares?
community, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
like get to work, like do something valuable. Like forget like how are you not part of the problem? How are you part of the actual solution? And this is
Right.
very similar, right? Like we distance ourselves from the saints and say, well, I'm not so and so. It's like, well, so and so wasn't so and so either until they became so and so. Right? Like there's nothing special about Saint Athanasius. There's nothing special about Saint Cyril. There's nothing special about Saint Anthony. The work of the Holy Spirit in them inspired them to become Saint Athanasius, Saint Cyril,
Right.
and Saint Anthony. And actually,
And where's Saint Sharif and Saint Ralph and Saint Mina? I mean, and Saint Mitch? That's what God's waiting for, you know? Heaven's waiting for us to become saints.
so this is what I've been carrying around in my pocket. I think it's hard to tell. Can you guys tell
Is
who
that
this is?
your is that your is that your Ozempic needle or what is that?
No, this is holy oil
Oh,
from Amba Bohemios.
Yeah. But
So one of our fellow Sunday school servants went to the monastery of Amba Bohemios and gave this out to everyone. And it was interesting because I had just been thinking about how much I admire this guy. Um, and mostly because uh, over the course of 2025, so all of last year, I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like Saint Anthony really had something brilliant going on in his head where he goes, you know what? I want to be closer to God
mhm.
over there,
Yeah, that's right.
right? Like being part of a community was like, you know what? This is a lot of work. Like, hmm. Yeah, no, I really like God. I just don't, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it, maybe I'm projecting, but like, at least for me, it would have been like, I just don't like you. Like, I don't know if,
well, they
say,
said Saint Anthony like led tens of thousands of monks, but not in the communities. But he was their spiritual fathers. So
Of
but
course.
they
Yeah.
like they would go see him, and then he gradually made it harder and harder for people to make it out to see him. Which I'm I'm very tempted to do this. It's like, okay, like I don't have a cell phone anymore. I have a landline and an email. You can leave me a message on my answering machine. But this guy did the opposite, right? He's said, let's be in community, let's be together. And whether my assessment of like St. Anthony's gonna see me one day and like he's gonna be like, you had it all wrong. Like I'm actually a really
Right.
nice person.
Right. We can't give our 21st century psycho babble to these gentlemen.
Right?
It's a big disservice.
No, like I actually love people. I love God more, and I'm gonna be like
Right.
so embarrassed.
Right.
But like I do think that um carrying this around to me is a reminder of the
just drop it.
yeah, I just dropped it. Carrying this around to me is a reminder that, being in that community is something that takes work and it's not something that comes easily. But I think, I don't want to see myself as being the limiting factor in that. So that's why I carry it around as a reminder, like, hey, like don't be this grumpy critic guy. Be more gracious, be more accepting, be more loving, be more positive, find good things to say and positive things to do. Um, and I'm sure I can't imagine Abu Chomios wouldn't support that notion.
There's one thing that I want to add, like mentioning St. Anthony, St. Athanasius, supporting the leader, whether it's the lead servant, priest, bishop, whatever, can sometimes be a in a form of stopping him. And okay, you are not doing this, or you should not do this. You should retire from doing this. But this comes after a lengthy or a series of interactions of obedience, of support, of love, of counseling And at a certain point, like I did it with some priests, like, okay, Abuna, you are not doing this. Or if you want to do it, don't do it in front of the kids, or don't do it with a Sunday school servant. You can do it with other group of people. Like over the last 5 years, and I'm going back to the politics in Egypt, at least 2 or 3 bishops were put on a sort of administrative leave because they were old, senior, demented. This was not the case like before 2012.
Right.
So I think this is a service for this bishop or this prelate or this priest to put him on the leave. And we need to cultivate this culture. Like, okay, not every priest can talk to Sunday school kids. No. Not every priest can talk in a servant meeting. Not every priest can talk in a men's retreat.
Not
And
every
that's the
priest can give a
sermon.
sermon. Not every priest can give a sermon. Not every priest can,
Well,
sadly, it's
others,
true.
yeah, not every priest can do this.
Not every pope.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I always try to catch you, Sharif.
Well, believe it or not, I don't listen to his sermon. Because I know, like, he's like the current Pope Tadros. I love him. I have very, very high respect for him. But his sermons are for a certain category. If I listen to that, I will take a benefit, but I'll not go and look for a sermon for this.
Well, we got
That's the
his
same, for
sermon
example,
coming
for
up.
Abuna Tadros. For Abuna Tadros, who is a very well knowledgeable, like, but his sermons are not my
Yeah.
style. I don't listen to Abuna Tadros sermons.
Whose sermons do you listen to?
In Arabic, Abuna Lua,
Everybody
Abuna
does.
Lo, which Abuna Lo?
Sidaro, Sidaro, late Abuna Lua Sidaro.
Hmm. English?
And in English, in the Coptic Church or outside of the Coptic Church?
Either one.
In the Coptic Church, I don't think I have a favorite one. I listen. I like Abu Sam sermon in Natick. My father of confession, I don't like his sermons. Um, I don't like the style of Abu Anthony Messa. If I read his sermons, that will be much better. Of DC.
Hmm.
Maybe Abu Paul of DC. I listen to him.
Hmm.
There is another priest in DC, Abu Mark Aziz. He gives like sermon in Arabic and English. I listen to both of them.
Hmm.
He's uh, he's a father and a scholar.
Hmm. Yeah, I tend not to listen to any sermons. That's why I'm asking, like, I'm like, if I were to start, where would I go? And it doesn't sound like really anywhere.
Evangelus, yeah, I listen to him in English.
Yeah,
But I look for the sermon of Abu Nalua. That's the difference. Like I'm like before he was sick, I make sure that every Sunday I listen to a sermon.
Hmm. Okay.
I'm not sure when you listen to it in Arabic, will you understand the fullness
No,
the
no, I
sermon?
wouldn't. That's why
No,
I'm asking. I wouldn't be able to appreciate it.
yeah, it's something different.
That's sad. I wish we had more options, you know?
Well, I'm sure we have, but it's what I prefer. And there is one particular bishop, George Hodor, Mount Lebanon of the Greek Antiochian Church. That's that's a master of preaching. And he
In
has
English?
article. Well, he preached in Arabic and French, but most of his articles are translated in English, French, and Arabic.
Hmm.
This is
I,
a this is Habib Girgis of the Antiochian Church.
and I think we're coming back to that same theme of, how to extract as much as you can from your environment and from the positive relationships that you can avail yourself of. And I think um, if you end up being too optimistic and everything's good and then it's just Abbat. But if you're too pessimistic and you're too critical, then you end up leaving things on the table that could have been beneficial or salvific in some way.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I like I again I like I said this before, but I do think that it's impossible to answer, to what extent am I going to carry my cross? The answer is just carry your cross and do your best. And, if you collapse, hopefully, God sends you the equivalent of Simon the Cyrenian to help carry with you. Like I mean this sincerely. I think to a great extent, for me, that's Sharif.
Oh, you
You,
are for me.
you're my Simon. And
Oh,
I
that's
think
beautiful. And I'm not mocking it. That really is beautiful. It really is. It
no, I
really,
mean I
really
mean
is.
it sincerely. Like when,
Wow.
I got to a point in service where I'm like, that's it, I'm dropping this thing. Like and he's like, no, 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 I'll get this part. You keep carrying your part. And I'm like,
Well, I've been
"Uh,
doing this for many years for me, actually.
what's that?
Even before, you've been doing this for me for many years, even before we knew each other.
I appreciate that.
I'll tell you how later.
Um, but I do think that, you know, if at the first sign of adversity or challenge, regardless of whether it's in your marriage or in your service or with this priest or with that priest, you look for an excuse to be like, you see, like I'm justified. No, like you're not justified. Like nobody's crankier than me. Nobody's more critical than me. But you don't get the excuse of just playing the cranky card, or well, this sucks, and therefore I'm justified to X, whether it's complain or leave or cause a scene. Um, and I do think that if we do follow Sharif's advice, where instead of seeing what's wrong around us, but seeing what's wrong inside of us, and instead of looking to criticize what's around us, looking to be part of the solution, I'm not saying it's fun. It's not. I can actually tell you it's not fun. It's really unfun. But I think if we had more of that, we'd have less of the other.
One thing, like I was reading about the monastic life, if a novice is coming to to the monastery with the mindset of, "Oh, I might leave one day," he will not continue. And immediately, I was thinking about marital life.
Yeah,
If we
exactly.
are starting a marriage with a prenuptial agreement, for example, it's the wrong mindset. Wrong mindset.
Right.
Or service or relationship at church
Right, right,
or
right.
at work. If I'm coming to my job, well, it will be a starter job a year or two, and then I'll jump to another job. Counterproductive.
Right.
I
He
can
he
jump
who
to another
puts his
job.
hand to the plow, um, what's the rest of it? And
Yeah.
something
Don't
Not
along
turn
those
talking
back.
lines.
English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and turn looks back, you know.
Right. It's Lot's wife syndrome, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you
Yeah.
don't look back. You don't, the goes nostrani. We do not separate. And in all our I think it's brilliant of Sharif to sort of it's not just marriage. It is all our relationships. If we do think of it as, oh, well, this is just temporary, well, then it's going to go nowhere and we're going to go nowhere and nothing's going to change and we're not going to change. But if it
Unless there is
is
a destructive behavior, like I'm not sure. It's not a Catholic marriage. My job
right,
is is there a destructive behavior, something? That's why you can hop between churches if there is a huge issue, but
right,
not a trivial one.
right,
Yeah. And I asked this of someone recently who said that, he's moving, and I was disappointed because I love this guy and I don't want him to move. And I asked them, are you leaving or are you going? And he
mm,
goes, what? And I asked him again with the same words, are you leaving or are you going? And he goes, oh, I see what you did there. And he goes, yeah, I get the difference. And I go, because you have to be very careful because if you're leaving, then you're just going to find another reason to leave, right? Like if you're if the reason that you're going to this new place is not because the new place has a new opportunity or a new experience or something that you're doing there that you're gravitating towards, um, and it's because like halas, I can't stand it here anymore and I need to get out of here. It's just a matter of time before the same thing happens over there. And that's true of a marriage, that's true of a job, that's true of a church, that's true of a city, that's true of anything. And I say this with a staunch record of our fondness, right? Like I don't like anything or anyone or anywhere, but the idea that despite my own weakness of disliking everything, finding the good in it and learning from people that are positive, and trying to coexist with my own dissatisfaction. It's for my own salvation. It's not for anybody else's benefit. Like I'm not, trust me, I'm not doing anybody else any favors subjecting them to my tyranny of dissatisfaction. Okay. Well, thank you guys
Serena.
for enlightening discussion on I Mustache You something. We'll hopefully reconvene with Mitch. Who I don't know.
أخذ على مشامه, as they used to say in Arabic.
What does
أخذ
that
على
mean?
مشامه.
What?
على
By
مشامه. This is your sham. أنت بتشم منها. هو
Yeah,
أخذ على مشامه.
I'm gonna have to have Sharif like
Sharif,
draw that out for
translate
me.
for me. Sharif, translate.
he
He
was
left.
caught out of his guards, something like that.